All right, everyone. Welcome back to We Are the Game. I'm Michael, and that's Luke. And today we're going to talk about Week 10 Cardinals in a big, bitter division rivalry against the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks coming off of their win against the Commanders, and Arizona, speaking of bitter, coming off their win against the Dallas Cowboys. A good game, good victory for them. And I think it's the right momentum that they needed to be heading into this game against what has looked like a very, very solid, consistent Seattle Seahawks team. I think this is what I would, as a passive Cardinals fan, this is the kind of momentum I would like to see going into that game. With all that being said, Luke, what do you think are the keys as you look at this game? What do you think the keys are on the approach that Arizona will take going into this game?
Well, people talk about the trenches, and that's where this is going to be. So we failed pretty badly in the trenches the last time we played them, and we have not been great there most of the year. We've allowed 13 sacks in the last 3 games with Jacoby Brissett, and if you were to extrapolate that out over the course of a season, I think the math I came up to was something like 73 sacks over the course of 17 games. So that's not sustainable, and I don't care if it's Jacoby Brissett or Josh Allen or Kyler Murray or whoever. They've got to be better. They've got to find a way. They've got to find solutions. And I should keep in mind, we did this 13 sacks in the last 3 games against teams that don't have really stellar pass rush. Obviously, the Packers have Micah Parsons, but as a whole, that team has middling-ish pass rush over the course of the season so far. Dallas really hasn't had much pass rush until they met us. And then Indianapolis has had a hard time this year. They probably get better now that they've got Sauce Gardner. But luckily, we don't have to play them. You guys will probably get better with Quinnen Williams. But again, luckily, we don't have to play you again. Seattle doesn't need any help in the pass rush department. They sacked us 6 times the first time. So if we want to have any chance here, I don't think we can let Jacoby get just beat to holy heckenback. So he's going to have to get better protection. On the other side of the ball, coming into the season, I looked at Seattle and thought, man, they have a ton of strengths. I think they have one crippling weakness, and I think it's their offensive line. And I think that'll keep them from being dominant this year. I was dead wrong. They've got a top 5 offensive line in the NFL, and they have ridden that. They've been with that all the way through the season so far. I think they've only been sacked 8 or 9 times. Now, I will say we sacked them 3 times in the game we played previously. So we're going to need to get after them. So, again, we have to win the battle in the trenches. If we want to have any kind of shot in this game, because they will annihilate. If Kyler's hard to catch, then Jacoby's going to get caught. So we'll see. But that would be the number one stat. If I could just look at the box score in advance, I'd be like, that's where I would look.
Yeah, no, and that makes perfect sense. I think the thing that I was surprised, going back to some of the comments you made about the Dallas game and how that plays into this, is the big thing, and I was surprised to see it as a Dallas fan, is it wasn't a player. Like we obviously don't have Micah Parsons anymore, or that guy who's like the guy who goes and gets you. So it has to be very scheme heavy. It has to be always somebody different, and which is what ultimately worked out. But I think it's really Jacoby Brissett that kind of comes out shining in that, is that he did get sacked. He did have to read those coverages. There was constant pressure, and he was still able to put together successful runs down the field. I think the play calling also was a lot better because it was hard to know play to play. Is this a run? Is this a pass? I think Jacoby handled all of that pressure really well. And I think, again, that speaks really well going into this game, because even if I think what is winning, right, in the trenches, it's not, I would be surprised if it's 0 sacks. Like that wouldn't be winning. That would be like a perfect storm kind of thing. Right. So can he handle that constant pressure? It looked to me like, based on the last game, he can. With that being said, we've seen Jacoby Brissett for a long time. So it's like, did he have a great game against Dallas, and now he's going to have a more average game, or I think he's going to play a real big role in that, as quarterbacks often do. I'll also be interested to see how your run game does against, because you were able to mount a pretty successful run game that hurt Dallas in that last game. So I think that'll be good. One of the other areas you've gotten a lot, I think, of mileage out of has been your rookie players. But you're I almost said Byron Murphy. Will Johnson at corner. We talk regularly about how challenging corner is as a first year player to walk into. That it's probably harder to be an impact player there than it is as a wide receiver or a lot of other roles. There's just so much complexity and so much is hinged on you. He seems to have really done well filling in that role and kind of getting up to the NFL level competition all season. Now all of a sudden we finally get to see Walter Nolan. You've been waiting for him all season to see like, okay, what does he really add to this against Dallas anyway? He was very disruptive, very exciting. Like all the things you kind of hear, and to see him next to Calais was really exciting. Do you expect them to be a big part of the game, and what do you kind of expect to see out of them? Are you happy with what you're getting from those kind of high value for early picks that you got this last season?
Very happy from them. Absolutely. I mean, we only have one game of Walter Nolan, but in
Right.
that one game, he gave you everything you asked for. He gave you a
Yeah.
pass deflection, a great tackle for loss, where he just jumped the run route or scheme or whatever,
Mhm.
and then that sack. And so, like, he did everything that you want. And someone pinpointed another play where he stopped the run, where it was just like they tried to create a gap, and he just jumped right into it
Yep.
perfectly. It wasn't a tackle for loss, but he just stopped him right at the line of scrimmage. So he is looking great, but it's a very small sample size. So as
Yeah.
his role gets expanded, probably through the rest of the year, and he goes from a snap count of 20 or so to a snap count of more like 50 or so, we'll see the effect his growth has, and like how much of Calais is rubbed off on him and that kind of thing. Other rookies, yes, Will Johnson. We're not sure he's going to play this week. He's missed some
Yeah.
practice, and he's missed some games this year. Thankfully, it hasn't been for the reasons that we came into the year worried about, because there's a reason why he fell in the draft. It was because of some of this injury history and concerns. It doesn't seem to be because of those things. It's more just getting nicked up, which happens, and it just does.
Yes.
But there are two other rookies who've kind of gone under the radar, but had some pretty positive effect. And one is the guy who plays instead of Will Johnson frequently when he's out. Of this Denzel Burke, 5th-round guy, but he's stepped up and played pretty respectably. Got his first pick technically against the Cowboys. It was really more of an arm punt on like 4th and 24 with a minute left in the game, but
Big end
still,
run.
he'll look good on his
Yeah.
stat sheet, so that's good for him. And the other guy is because Mac Wilson, who's our better off-ball linebacker right now, and really, again, kind of an under-the-radar stud on the team, he's missed some practice this week as well. And we drafted a guy out of Ohio State, Cody Simon, who was like the defensive MVP in the college championship
Mhm.
last year. Really good guy, but we're waiting for him to kind of shake the rookie off. And
Yeah.
so he looked good, made a big play against Dallas as well, forced a fumble.
Yep.
His role is going to expand more and more throughout the year. Former coach Bruce Arians for the Cardinals used to say, is like, once it's Thanksgiving, you're not a rookie anymore. So as those young guys, as their roles expand and the coaches understand, it's like, okay, this guy gets it and we can use him in these ways. There's confidence in their abilities. You're going to see more and more of that. And so not just for this game, but for the games moving forward, I do look forward to seeing some of that. But yeah, if we can get Walter Nolan rolling,
Mhm.
it's a fun little
Yeah.
catchy thing to say,
Yeah.
along with Calais and Josh Sweat and so on. If we can get a real pass rush and disrupt what has been an exceptionally run offensive line for the Seattle Seahawks, we can actually make a mess in this game. Keep in mind, we lost the last game against them
Mhm.
by 3 points. So it wasn't
Yeah.
like we got blown out back in the old days where it was 58-3. It was a very close game.
Yeah.
And going back to what you were talking about Jacoby Brissett, and
Mhm.
yes, he's taken more sacks, but his willingness to stay in the pocket and risk getting sacked,
Yeah.
there is an optimism there, yes, but there's also Kyler Murray has been heavily criticized for this. He's thrown the ball very short, and his longest pass in the last Seahawks game
Yeah.
was like 10 yards.
Okay.
Jacoby has gone much farther this season. He's willing to stay in there and take those hits and so on, and that's great. But again, if Kyler Murray is only he's throwing the ball when they're 5 yards away, Jacoby's going to try to wait till they're 15, 20 yards away. How
Yeah,
many
it's
more
scary.
times might he get sacked? That's kind of the threat that I was
Yeah.
worried about earlier on that I was talking about. I do respect his willingness to hang in the pocket and take the hits. That's not just good. That's probably necessary if you want to win in this league, especially you just can't build your team with the assumption, I don't care how good your offensive line is, that your
You got
quarterback's
one.
never going to get hit.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing, but it kind of scares me a little bit too that He may get sacked 9 or 10 times against this elite pass rush. So we'll see how that goes. I assume the coaches will game plan a little bit around how much time he has. And they'll probably try to lean on the run. You mentioned the run. We didn't run the ball on them particularly well last time we played them.
No.
And about half the yards we got were Kyler Murray running. And Jacobi, for all the things he does great, he's not the mobilistest of mobile guys. So that's fine. But we're going to have to find new creative ways to get the run game going. So, yeah, the rookie class should be a big impact. But, yeah, I definitely wanted to touch again on the stuff because it's the quarterback. Obviously, especially with the news most recently about Kyler going on IR and Jacobi being the guy moving forward, at least for the immediate future and for a while. We'll see how long the coach really means that because he's been kind of back and forth. We'll see what that does. But, yeah, I'm interested in that for sure.
Well, and at some point in that whole controversy, if you will, kind of thing between Jacobi and Kyler, is at some point in time you just need stability. Like the players need stability. They need to know what things are from week to week. And whatever side of that argument they may be on, at some point in time, you just need to know what things are so that you can prepare for it week to week. I would think, I definitely think if you'll pull out a win against the Seahawks here, Jacoby Brissett will be pretty well solidified, I would think, into that role. And it'll be more his to lose, I would think, just from a stability standpoint with the team. Who knows? Who knows what that'll play at? Let's take a second and talk about the quarterback on the other side of the ball because I think he is a linchpin in this whole thing. Sam Darnold, there was a lot of talk about him after the season he had with the Vikings last year. I always was amazed at how much uncertainty there seemed to be around him after that. And I think the uncertainty to me was, can he win the big game? Which will yet to be seen. But I mean, he has picked up right where he left off. I feel like from last season with this team, they've put some good players and people around him. And that's worked out well. But as you pointed out, their offensive line has really played beyond themselves. I do think he plays some level of role in that. And now he's got some new tools to play with as of this week with the addition of Rashid, Shaheed. How do you think all that play? I guess it's two-part questions. Your thoughts on Sam Darnold and how pivotal or not you think he is to that offense? And then what impact would you think, I know Cooper Kupp's a little banged up, but JSN and Rashid Shaheed, how do you think that offense will function, and what intrigues you with that kind of going into this game?
Yeah, I mean, he does make them better. I do believe that Shaheed's one of those somewhat underappreciated guys as the number 2 on kind of a bad football team. But he has had some, even amongst that, an under the radar team that's not getting talked about a lot. People still know who he is because he makes some real difference maker kind of plays. We talked about it when we were doing power rankings, and I talked about him. It kind of reminds me of Gabe Davis that was with the Buffalo Bills, where you're like, man, he's not the starter. It's at the time, I believe it was Stephon Diggs. Like, he's not the one. But, man, he had like a 200-yard game and 3 touchdowns, and he just destroyed a game. And he can just be that guy. Chris Godwin is another guy that comes to mind, where he's not really the one, but you better not ignore him because he'll destroy you in 3 or 4 plays. And so that he can be that. There is always the idea that he's going to have probably a somewhat limited package coming into the game. But someone did point out that his current offensive coordinator or head coach, I've forgotten what, is there's a connection between the Saints, and I've forgotten exactly what their positions were. Like Kubiak. He's been with him twice now. And so he should have some familiarity with his system. So that whole first game thing may happen. Still, my fingers and toes are all crossed that it won't happen, but it might happen. Sam Darnold, he really has been exceptional. I have to give it to him there. I was one of the people that had doubts. I was like, yeah, you did that with a great team around you and a really good offensive line, and he's doing that again, kind of. He's got a great wide receiver 1 who I underestimated a bit. I thought Jackson Smith-Njigba was good. I didn't think he'd be best wide receiver in the NFL good. And he is turning into maybe not that, but like in contention for at least having the best season. You talked about Cooper Kupp. Yeah, he has not been – they clearly expected Cooper Kupp to take a step back, which is why the Rams let him go, which is why the Seahawks were able to sign him for not a bargain, but not a fortune. It's a fortune to me, but, not an enormous contract like what Jamar Chase is getting. And so there's a reason for that. And he's a bit dinged up. and he's just not having the production he once had. So I think all that kind of combines to be why they picked up Shaheed. And he should, I mean, he should complement what they're doing and make them even more explosive. And then the rare occasions that, Smith and Jigba is shut down or limited, then they've got Shaheed to go to as an alternative. It diversifies their abilities a bit.
I agree.
And so I do like that for a team. I hate it for the Seahawks, but I like it for a team in general terms. So that'll be tough to contend with. If we're going to contend with that, that goes back to my first point. It's going to be because we got pressure on Darnold. Because at some point we just don't have enough corners. I don't care if we've got Will Johnson and Max Melton and Garrett Williams and everyone. If he's got 6 seconds to stand back there and pick you apart, it's just not going to matter. So it's going to be quite the test.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's going to be very interesting. If you had to point out like what you think the focus or the key on just the offensive side of the ball for the Cardinals, like what do you anticipate them to be focused on or trying to do going into that game? I think we talked about the importance of the offensive line, the defensive line for the Cardinals providing that disruption. But on offense, how would you assume that they're going to try to approach this game? Going into it, because it's a tough matchup against this defense.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think the Cardinals really do. Like, I've thrown some shade at Drew Petzing here and there, and I'm not really trying to do that right this second. But I don't think he has some particularly sideways, complicated scheme for dealing with pressure. I think he has somewhat traditional methods of dealing with it, and he tries to pull them off with really well. I can't think of the word. Just do it really well. So if you can get the run game going, that helps with pressure. If you can use short routes to kind of offset things, which screams Trey McBride. Well, they weren't really able to contain Trey McBride too well the last game. He had 7 catches, not tons of yards, but 7 catches and extended some drives and things like that. They did do well against the run. If we could get that going, and this is not even to suggest the fact that maybe the offensive line has a better game, which some position groups just kind of turn it on at some point in the year. And so that's a possibility. So we'll see. But things like that, like, can you do the traditional things, but then just do it well enough to combat the pressure that they are sure to get and sure to lean on? And I would. I mean, if I was playing against us, I'd be trying to get after the passer. So we'll see. These things like that. And then combine that with, if you can build that into some success. Wow, let's try that again. If you can build that into some success with deeper passes where,
opens up everything.
Once their secondary doesn't realize, it's like, oh, we can just lean forward the whole game. It's like, no, they are going to go deep on us every once in a while. So they can't stack the box even more. All that could be complementary and help us sneak out of here with a win somehow. But yeah, it's a tall order. That's a good team.
It is. But like we've been talking about, is that, the Cardinals really haven't been blown out much at all this year, right? Their games are close. They're playing very competitive football, especially on defense. Hopefully I didn't jinx them there. But I really think this will be a good game. They played the division, I think, pretty well. So yeah, I'm hoping for a really good game here. The middle game, one of the best games I think on this weekend. It'll be in competition with the rest of your division, who's also playing at that exact same time. So it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Hopefully, celebrating a good outcome there for the Cardinals on that. But should be a good matchup. Thanks everybody for joining. We just hit 100 subscribers, and we are now on our journey to 200 subscribers. So if you wouldn't mind dropping a like or subscribe, and definitely please join us in the comments, throw out your ideas, your thoughts. We'll happily join in on those conversations, and we can talk those things out. Outside of that, have a great day.